Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking with Gravity. I am your host, Joshua Williams.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Hannah.
Hello, I'm Tamara.
And I'm Terrence.
We can be very informal here. Just letting you know, Tamara. Tamara's our guest.
Okay.
Actually, everyone.
Yeah.
Tamara's our guest.
Special.
Very special guest. Very special guest. She has a lot of great things going on right now, and we want her to talk about it a little bit. Just to want to give a little context real quick, y'all. So today we're going to be talking about grief, right? Grieving holistically, a very important and a very sensitive subject. I know for a lot of our listeners, for us as well, being up here on this stage, doing what we do. So we're glad that you could join us today, and we hope that you find some things that are, that you can take with you, and that can help you out along your journey. But
Episode 81, y'all.
Episode 81, that's right. Kobe numbers. Let's go. Yeah, Kobe put up 81 back in the day. Doggone this. But yeah. Anyway, never mind all that.
I was like, I can't keep up. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we move a little bit, don't we? Right. But we want to move to you now. So
okay.
we love for you to introduce yourself and to our great audience here and hear more about you.
Okay, well, I'm Tamara Houston. I am, I'm going to go down the list. So I'm a clinical social worker, which means I provide therapy, mental health therapy or psychotherapy. I am a clinical supervisor as well. So that is where I work with LMSWs or people that have like a master's in social work and they're working toward their independent licensure. And supervision. I provide consultation to private practices that are either starting up or expanding their practice. So I've been doing that for a couple of years. I'm an EMDR approved consultant as well. So that's the type of therapy that I use as trauma informed. I offer intensives and doing that work. I'm a training coach for EMDR as well. And, I'm the founder of Healing Through Time, which is my kind of grief resource brand that I started a couple of years ago, and we'll get into that later. Evidently, I'm a podcaster.
Yes.
I'm a podcaster.
What's the name?
It is called The Healing Bloom, a safe space to grieve. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
New to the game, but, yeah, I'm doing that. So,
Congrats on that
Thank
endeavor
you.
as
Most
well.
definitely.
Thank you. I'm an author, too. I didn't bring my other book, but I have some materials here. But some years ago, I co-authored an anthology called Fortitude. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
I told her she wasn't to tell everything I was going to call out, but it sounds like she did a pretty good job.
So everything that she
Yeah,
did,
she
went down that list.
It sounds like you have your hands full, but what led you to the profession of mental health and grief counseling?
So, I'm going to try to make a long story short. I think with therapy, it was something that I just slid into. That was not my intention at all. Like, had someone told me that I was going to be a therapist years ago, maybe when I started college, I would have called them a liar to their face, because that was just not what I was interested in. I like macro work and working with people, but the thought of like doing therapy, I was like,
What's macro work? What's macro work?
Macro would be like nonprofit work, program development, stuff like that. So I'm a creative at heart, and I like to work with people and build things. So that's really my passion, to be honest with you. I think I'm better at that than I am a therapist, to be honest with you. But I think it works hand in hand. So I just really hopped into therapy in that way, pushed by my mentors, them providing me different opportunities. And I like a challenge. I like to, for somebody to tell me I can't do something, so I'm going to do it anyway, just that kind of thing. And grief actually was a topic that came about, something that was really passionate for me even before I even thought about like a career in doing grief work anyway. Like it comes from a more personal aspect, family stuff that I saw going on. Being, I'm a nerd, so I was really curious about watching people and how they grieve and wanting to just know more. But I mean, it's my family, so they're going to look at me like, you know, what, why? So I knew that I wanted to get into hospice work.
Okay.
So through some other jobs, I ended up getting into hospice. I worked in hospice for 8 years, and I really contribute that to being like my training ground for the therapist that I am today, actually. So it just kind of transitioned into what we have now. Yeah.
That's amazing. And also earlier I heard you mention EMDR. Can you just explain to our audience that may not, have context of what that is, what EMDR is?
Absolutely. So I'm going to try not to get tongue-tied. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So very long name, but EMDR, it is a trauma-informed therapy. We say it is more somatic in nature, meaning usually when we think about therapy, we're talking about more talk therapy. So it's more of a neck up therapy, a lot of narrative, changing the way you think about things. And so this therapy is more focused on neck down. So it's really kind of tapping into the body. It's very body informed, trauma focused.
So when you're doing those eye movements, I'm really curious.
So
now,
you know
what
about
are
it?
No, I don't.
You said eye movements, right?
That's a start, right?
Yeah.
So what is that to accomplish? Just curious.
So, again, I'm going to try not to get too deep into it, but if you think about when, first of all, I'll say the founder of EMDR, how she founded it was there was something going on with her. She was walking along the beach and she noticed that as she was walking, her eyes were like moving back and forth. So that just kind of started her curiosity around that and research and all that stuff. So her name is Francine Shapiro. So she started that. But one of the premises for the eye movement, or BLS we call it, or DAS, which is bilateral stimulation or dual attention stimulation, is that it helps you to keep like one foot in the past, one foot in the present. And how you can think about that is someone sleeping. If you've ever watched anybody sleep, not to be like crazy or anything, but if you ever watched anybody sleep and you see their eyes like moving kind of like a figure eight or just going back and forth, that's the same thing that we're trying to mimic in a way. When we sleep, our body is reprocessing. It is repairing, replacing, renewing our tissue, our muscles, different things, resetting for us to be refreshed and start a new day, right? So it's like a repair of trauma that has happened in the past, and the way that our body kind of makes these connections with different traumas is such that we can be in 2024. Something happens and it reminds us of something that happened 2-3 decades ago. And our body doesn't have a timestamp. So it's just like, oh, I remember that feeling. So now I'm right back into feeling that. So what we're trying to do with EMDR is keep a person in the present where they're safe, right? But one foot in the past so that they can access how those memories are reprocessed and are processed and basically unpack it and package it the right way so that they can have a different type of relationship with those memories. It happened. It sucked. I don't like it, but I'm not impacted by it where I can't regulate emotionally.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
She explained it way better than I could have because I tried to talk about it in a previous episode, but it was nothing like that. I'll tell you that right now.
She did a great job.
And it just lets you know that there are things out there that you can do, right? Like you don't just have to sit with your trauma.
You don't have to get stuck in it.
Yeah, you don't have to be stuck.
No, not at all.
Now that does remind me of what people want to know. And Terrence usually takes this over. Terrence, I don't want to steal your show, but...
Don't worry about it. I got it.
You got it?
Okay, let me look up here.
What do the people want to know?
People want to know, as of January of 2024,
What they want to know.
there are over 3.3 million posts on Instagram that says #grief. So the people want to know, should you post yourself crying on social media?
And this is a question for me.
Everybody.
Everybody.
Oh.
So the people want to know. So matter of fact, since you can go ahead and start.
Okay, I don't mind. I think people can do what people want to do.
You right.
So let's start there. One part of us, a strategy in trying to work through kind of the deep impacts of our grief experience is connecting with our people, finding our community. And we are a very social media heavy world now. Like, this is how we access connection. It's very different from when I was growing up, and maybe some of you, but nowadays, this is how we connect with people. So I think our grief needs to be witnessed. There's a concept called mirroring, and we see that happen a lot with babies. Like, you smile at a baby, they smile back. You know, you laugh, they laugh back. Like, we want our experiences to be mirrored. And so, is it something that I would choose for myself? No. In fact, I've had a lot of losses, and you'll never hear about it, read about it on social media, none of that. But if that is what someone chooses to do to get that connection, I don't have a personal issue with it. My concern is that sometimes these types of platforms, people don't know what to do. So someone may be expecting something, their expectations are here, and what they're getting back is not really what they expected or genuine. So, like, I like my circle small. So I would want my experience to be shared in a smaller circle, but if that works for someone and their need is being met, then do what you need to do.
Yeah.
My concern with it is often that what I've seen is that when people are crying on social media, sometimes it's a call for help, and also sometimes it's their last resort. And that's what scares me. I agree that I would never cry on social media, but I do acknowledge that if somebody is, sharing their sad emotions on social media, on the web, maybe that is a reason for me to reach out. If I know this person personally, maybe that's a reason for me to reach out to somebody they may know personally and be like, hey, you might want to check in on this person. So to me, I wouldn't do it personally, but I do understand why someone may do it. It may be their last resort. It may even be their first resort. I don't know. But to me, I take it as a call to action. What can I do to help? And even if I can't help that person, maybe I can share a resource with them. Maybe I can just send them a website and say, hey, I think you should check out these resources.
Yeah.
That's good.
I like the way you explained it. People want connection. Now, whether that is whatever reason that might be, because it could have good intentions, could have bad intentions, but at the basis of it, they want connection. Some people might say, oh, they just crying for it to get attention. Well, why do they want attention? For connection, right? So I think if we
good point.
Really try to understand what people are trying to get, right, and try to help them fulfill that need so they don't have to go for attention-seeking behaviors, as some people would say, then we can really help them, right, that call, that action, that call for help, let them know you're not alone, I still see you, and I hear you, and validate them, because I think that's what they go to social media for, that validation, because whether that's for likes, shares, reposts, comments, it's ultimately validation, in my opinion. I think you can really help that person through what they're struggling with, instead of just saying, oh, they shouldn't be doing that, they shouldn't be doing this, and why are they doing that? They're just looking for attention. So I think trying to come from a place of understanding.
That's good.
And when we think about grieving holistically, social media is a huge factor in some people's grief process. Social media is just such a huge platform that we can't just avoid it and deny and make it seem like it's not a factor and it doesn't have an influence on how some people may grieve. They may be positively influenced by social media and they may be negatively influenced. But that just takes us to the QD of the hour, which is just a stat or quotable data that you can share with your loved ones, and also share this episode with them as well. If you know someone that may be grieving or is having difficulty grieving, or even if they're not grieving at all, we know that grief is a process that we all will have to experience one day or another. So go ahead and share it with your friends. But information gathered from numerous HR professional organizations stated that 6 out of 10 companies have specific policies addressing bereavement. Among these organizations, the average duration of time off provided for grief is 5.6 days. However, experts in grief counseling recommend a minimum of 20 days off for individuals who have recently experienced a loss, and the reference is PRNE Newswire.
That's way up under that recommended time off.
Yeah.
What y'all think about that? You looking over here? What you think about this?
How many days do you think a person should get?
Oh, geez.
I can start by saying it varies. It varies on who that person lost, what type of relationship they had, and there's so many different determining factors. So I understand why organizations may only permit, 5 or 6 days or whatever their policy is. I understand the standard policy, but then there's also a side to say, okay, this person just lost someone very close to them. We may need to give them a little more grace, or we may need to give them a little more time off so that they can take care of that self-care aspect and grieve properly. And then also I just want to highlight that even if they did take 20 days off from work, they're not going. Their grieving process is not going to be complete in those 20 days.
Absolutely not.
That time off, it's just time to regulate your emotions. Have some self-care, spend time with family. But I do believe that, grief is a long process.
Yes.
Yeah, that is true.
And like you said, it depends on who it is. I know some companies, if it's not your immediate family, like mom, sister, grandma, grandpa, whatever, it is, oh, you ain't getting them days.
Right.
You better take that PTO or whatever you got, but we ain't giving you those grieving or bereavement days. So it better be auntie, sorry.
Yeah.
Uncle, PTO, because the bereavement doesn't count, and I think that's not right, because some people are closer to these extended family members that are not immediate, and they still experience the same type of grieving process for that loss than they would if it was their mom, dad, sister, brother, or grandparents. And I think personally that bereavement period should include, any type of loss. Yes, they have to put parameters in it because, it's business and corporations, stuff like that. But I don't like the limitations they put on it in some aspects. So,
Yeah. Biology doesn't determine relationships. So that's one of the things for me is, and nowadays when we think about the dynamics of a relationships are quite varied as well. So that automatically dismisses some types of relationships that we wouldn't consider like standard or normal or, per whomever standards or whatever. So I think it's varied. I certainly agree with you. I think in terms of the recommendation for the number of days, what came to mind, because I didn't know that statistic, but what came to mind is the thought around it taking about 21 days to establish routine. If a person is in a space during that time where they can focus on establishing routine, that would certainly be helpful. That amount of time makes perfect sense to me. But what I know to be true about grief and where people usually are immediately following a loss of any kind, they're usually not there in 21 days following a loss.
And you said a really great point about getting a person that just had a significant loss. They have to get back to that routine, or not even back to that routine. They have to find a new routine. And what I listened to, I can't remember the resource, but I do remember it was on TikTok. A lady was describing that she just lost her dad, a significant figure in her life. And her therapist said, you don't have to get back to your routine because your dad is no longer in your life. So you can't get back to calling your dad every morning. You have to now adjust to a new routine and adjust to life without that person in your life. And it just reminded me about how grief is a process. And people go through stages, of course, as you know, and I want you to explain a little bit, if you can, about the different stages of grief that a person may go through, because it's now a new routine, a new adjustment that a person has to take, and it's major.
Absolutely.
So I do know one of the first stages of grief is denial. Have you all ever experienced denial when it comes to losing a significant person in your life?
Yep. All the time.
Absolutely.
I don't know to what extent I've experienced it. Right. I feel as though sometimes in the beginning I may be like, man, come on, that can't be. But I feel like I've seen people really stick with that. Like no, it ain't true. Like really stick with that. So I almost feel like there are levels to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it falls on the spectrum because it's more like denial and shock. I think your body is trying to regulate itself from like that is actually it's an immediate attack on the brain. Like immediate. Like here's a threat to your brain. So your body is trying to figure out like what just happened. There's no longer this state of equilibrium. So I think some people like it does take a little bit longer to kind of figure out the processing what just happened, the processing the reality, and the way the brain works. Again, there's a threat there, and you immediately go into a different focus in terms of survival.
Right.
So, kind of processing what happens, it goes offline. You know, it's like the internet messed up. It ain't working no more. And I think that process can certainly take a little bit longer. And even before then, we have anticipatory grief. So a lot of this stuff that we're talking about is like once the event happens, but we experience some of these things and others even before the loss. In fact, we're living in a state of anticipatory grief right now because there are times that we think about, oh, you know, one day Big Mama not going to be here, or, you know what I mean, or I'm going to be graduating, or, you know, whatever. Those are things that we certainly like think about and we play out.
I want to say, when does it become grief though? Because I mean, I might think about things like that, but when does it become like this anticipatory grief?
It becomes grief when you identify it as a loss in connection. And there's no true measure for that because it's more internal.
Yes.
So this is why we don't need to fall in the trap of comparing, because what we see is someone's expression of mourning. We see the crying, the going to the funeral. We see those things, but you know, we may say, "Oh, she looked like she doing all right." I may look like I'm doing all right, but I am tore down.
Grieving,
right?
A lot of times.
You don't know what that experience is on the inside, so that comparison too should go offline.
Right.
Right. So the moment that I identify that there's a potential loss, or that there's a loss in something or someone that I have a connection to, even if I don't love, like, care for that person, I grieve things that I dislike as well.
And Josh, I really appreciate how you spoke to the different severities of grief. Right now we're talking about the first phase or stage of grief, which is denial. And you did say that each person experiences that differently. Yours might be temporary. Okay, oh my goodness, I can't believe this person just passed. And then you move on to the next phase maybe. But like you said, it is different severities. And Tamara, I also wanted to highlight how you said that our brain literally changes. Not only does our brain change, but the chemicals inside of our brain changes. Our brain no longer is in this equilibrium, homeostasis state of mind where it's calm, you know, normal. Now we have a lot of electrons and just chemical imbalances. And then that just reflects in our actions, that reflects in our emotions. So grief is very serious. And the first stage, of course, is denial, but that leads us to the next stage, which is anger. Do y'all want to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah.
And I just want to list all of the stages so that you all know what to anticipate. But the stages of grief is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance.
Well, I'm glad you named all of them because I don't think there's a specific order that it goes into.
Think about it.
Because I know, like, when my grandmother passed, like, there were some people who was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this has happened. This isn't real." And there was some people who was, my uncle, he was mad. He just went straight to, like, "I already know," and he just cussing and yelling at people. So he skipped, one stage. But so I don't think it's a step by step thing. I think it's fluid or whatnot. But I never really thought about anticipatory grief. Is what I never really thought about that because. sometimes I think about what if my mom wasn't here, or one day my mom isn't going to be here, and I think about that, and that does make have an emotional response to that. But then at the same time, I think about when my grandmother was dealing with Alzheimer's, and everybody was having that anticipatory grief, seeing her decline. Right. So, and then trying to, I think if you have that anticipatory grief, it can help in a way because you're going through those stages and you're preparing yourself. So when it does happen, you're kind of accepted it at that point. So I think that helps. But I also think it can prolong it in a way sometimes. But I never really thought about that. So I'm glad you really brought that up, and because I think we all do that sometimes. I even do it with my dog. Right? So, like, I've had my dog, Zoe, for 10 years. And one of my biggest fears is coming home from work and she's passed away, right? Yeah. I know that's, another way is I have to take her to the vet because she's gotten sick. My boss told me about that. She was like, yeah, that could happen. I was like, yeah, but my fear, anticipatory, is I come home and she's passed away. And then me going ahead and, again, have an emotional response to that because how my brain is wired, I think that is very good. So I want people to really take that point of anticipatory grief.
What are some, I guess, coping strategies for that anticipatory grief? Is it, what are healthy ways to think about it, right? Because, sometimes you can't help but to anticipate, what's the inevitable, right?
Right.
So what are some healthy ways to think about it?
There go that voice again.
I think.
I can't.
What's the voice?
Yeah. Okay.
Is it like
before
it's a lingering insider.
Wait. So, have you heard my voice change in any kind of way?
I did.
Then we got
Accountability.
I thought maybe you just needed to take a drink.
Dang, it sound bad.
It doesn't sound bad. It sounds like.
I've never seen what it sound like. I'm not going
It's just noticeable.
It sounds like what's the BET show at night?
At night. What did you say? BT
What's
show
it
at
called?
night.
What's
the
show
music?
called?
What's
that? Well, something soul.
Donnie Simpson.
Okay, I gotta look that brother up.
How y'all doing out there tonight?
Gonna be a pretty
He was
smooth
wild.
brother.
Ain't
We're
nothing
just
wrong
gonna
with your
take it
voice.
nice and slow.
That part.
I might be done missed my call.
This is your calling.
We're gonna ease into that question then.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So, to say that there's a specific strategy, I would have to think about that, because I think the anticipatory grief is not as intense. I don't think is like, again, once the loss has happened, right? And I'm just saying that just off the cuff. I don't think it is as intense as like that grief process. But what I do think is important in terms of strategizing is to not run away from the reality or the awareness that you have, to lean into it. There is, do I have his book here? David Kiesler, who wrote Finding Meaning, and he was actually like a mentee of Kubler-Ross, since we're talking about the 5 stages of grief here. In this book, he notes that he researched buffalo. And, he makes a joke about it, about researching buffalo, and he's like, the reason for that is, he said, one of the practices with buffalo is whenever they realize that a storm is coming, they run into the storm. And they run into the storm because they get to decide when it's going to hit. So instead of them waiting, instead of them waiting and prolonging the process, they just run into the storm. And so they run into it, they get through it, they get on the other side, and it's done. I think about times when there's a really bad storm, because I was in a wreck a few years ago. I'll pull over. And I honestly have to sit there and think, why am I doing that? If I just go through, like, I'm going to get on the other side, right? Anticipatory grief and our experience just with grief in general is our tendency is to avoid, and we want to go this way. And so what happens is now we have this built-in companion of grief,
Companion
of this
grief.
intense grief, because we're not joining with it, we're not leaning into it, we are running away from it.
So we can't learn from it.
Right. So, and it's not
Right.
going anywhere.
It ain't going no
It's not
place.
going
Right.
anywhere. This is your experience. Like, this is your stuff. And there is depression, there's anger, there's sadness, all of this stuff that we're talking about. But there's also opportunity and beauty in it, too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we don't get that if we don't act like the buffalo and just
Yeah.
run into it.
I love that.
I
Run
love
into the storm. Right. That and you talk about your car situation. I was in a motorcycle accident. I hit a deer. So in my mind,
God.
it's the same thing. Like if I'm riding my motorcycle and it's dark because I hit it at night. If I get off on the exit where I got into my accident, I slow down, which in my mind is like, oh, let me slow down and be cautious, which is smart. But at the same time, if I slow down, if there's another deer
Right.
around the corner,
Right.
I have more likely to hit that deer instead of just riding through it, right? Or you don't never want to ride a motorcycle and get caught in a storm. I'll tell you that because that rain feels like needles. But the thing is, if you see people pulled over on a motorcycle under a bridge, it's because they're trying to avoid the storm. But there's been times where right here it's raining, it's pouring. 5 minutes down the road, sun is shining. But I'm just sitting here getting soaked because it's raining and pouring. I don't want to move. I don't want to move. And I think that's one of the important things with grief. Like you said, you have to move.
You gotta move.
If you sit, you sitting in that grief. And I'm not saying you shouldn't sit in the grief, but you can't stay in the
Idle,
grief.
yeah.
Right.
You gotta,
So I think that's important.
you gotta
I do
have.
agree.
You got to be able to see the other side.
Yeah.
It sounds like, or at
And-
least have some hope that
Yeah.
that it is.
Hope.
a-
I would
That's
say
what it
have
is.
hope
Yeah,
because
I agree.
sometimes when you're battling grief, you cannot see the other side in that situation. But as long as you have that faith and that hope,
Faith
and
and
that
hope.
leads me to saying that not only is it important for us to press forward, or an individual to press forward when they're experiencing grief, but it's so important to have a community around you that is able to support you during that time. It makes me think about one example of community is that my church, they provide like food and meals to a family that may have just recently experienced a loss, and that is just one way that you can show that person or that family, hey, we see you, we know that you have needs, we're here to help and support you. So that's just one example of having a community to support you during that low point in your life.
Big.
When you said that you need a support system, that I brought up a question. And with that study of buffalo, did it say the buffalo run together, or does if an individual buffalo is by itself and they see a storm, it's going to run by itself, or is it like a group
Because it's in
of-
a pack.
So I'm going to ask you, what do you think happens?
They wait. Look, I'm just gonna say this. All right, me and Tamara, we have a. She's helped me with a lot of things in my career, and every time I would ask her a question, she'd do the same thing. So
Do I?
yes. But guess what though? It's
she
helped
think.
me a lot.
Did somebody
So-
do that to you, Tamara? Just curious.
All the time.
See,
Somebody did
but
that to
it
you?
helped me a
Okay.
lot because
From one
instead of
therapist to
she might
another.
know the answer, but instead of giving me the answer, I have to come up with my own answer, and it makes me think and process and come up with it. So I always tell you I appreciate that, and I'll answer the question. I think it's when they're in a pack because we're going to tackle this storm together. That's what I think.
Absolutely. At the core of who we are, we desire connection. We desire connection, safety, and security.
Yep.
So anybody who says like, I like to be by myself, that may, I mean, I'm an introvert, so I get that feeling, but I also like my people too.
Your
Right?
people.
My people.
Your people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your
That's
community.
And
like
yeah.
yeah.
So that
I agree.
connection, and this experience of grief is not intended to be pursued solo.
No, not at
right?
all.
So we need that. That is one of the strategies is to find your people. Right, to find that support group, to find that group of and the truth is now, the people might not be the people that you think should be there.
Yeah.
Or that you thought would be there. So your family, your friends, because honestly, our the same people they don't know what to do, and this is often like why this conversation is so important, because people don't know what to do,
Right.
and
Left
they don't
and
know
right.
what to say, and it's almost like I just want you to go ahead and get past this, so then I don't have to deal with my stuff.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Right, because if you're
man.
crying, I see you sad, then now I feel
Triggers.
yeah.
There we go.
And so those may not be your people, because
Yeah.
those people are going to say, well, you just need to go ahead and get up and get over it.
Them ain't your people, yeah.
Right? Those aren't your people. Now, I'm not saying that, and we can talk about this later, that there isn't some truth in that, but there's a time for
Yeah.
everything when it comes to the grief experience. So, yeah, at some point, like I say, with healing through time, time does not heal all wounds. It does not. It's what you do in between the ticks, because the clock is still going to tick. But what are you going to do? Right? You said it. You got to move.
Boom.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is that it's okay to experience grief because it's a normal process of life, but you have to take action in that grief.
We lose every day. We just lost 5 minutes ago.
She said that time is, it ain't about the time. It's about what you do in between the ticks. Oh,
Did I preach?
I felt
Why don't you
that.
come back and preach some more? Too,
I'm
you
trying
know?
to tell you. I'm trying to tell you. So, Josh, you have any more questions for again?
I do want to ask Tamara.
I was about to have one.
He
Oh,
couldn't
go
get that
ahead,
little
then.
voice
Saying
there.
if it went from a
Tamara, I do want to
that
ask
voice.
you, have you seen like cultural differences in how people grieve, deal with grief?
Oh, certainly. I would just say my experience in hospice was so enlightening, honestly, because part of my experience there, I had to attend the funeral services or celebration of life services for my clients that I served, and then we just had community members that we did that for. And there's certainly a difference, I think, and I am generalizing here when I
Yeah.
say that I think black and brown people are more expressive or more like outwardly emotive
Okay.
than our counterparts, and for what reason I don't know. I think spiritually there are some differences, because I would certainly go to funerals or those celebrations where it was different, like denominations being celebrated, and so there were some differences there as well. But again, that does not change the core of what grief is, right? What we have to do on this side of the table is just be aware that there are cultural differences that we need to consider when we are engaging with people, that we have conversation and dialogue about those things, because sometimes it may just be the language. We're talking about the same thing, but it's the language that we need to get on the same page about.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Tamara, where can we find you at? Your books, your
Everywhere.
Not just your books, but where can we find you at?
So, with Healing Through Time, my information is there, but you can just Google Healing Through Time. Again, that is my grief resource brand, and so you're going to find the bi-monthly Table Talk podcast. I have the Grief Journal and the card decks there, grief support group. I'll soon be rolling out, a community directory. So for those of you listening out there that are experiencing this, whether you're a therapist, a coach, whatever, have a support group. If you're interested in being on that directory, you can reach out to me on Facebook, Healing Through Time, and on the website, healingthroughtime.org. That is going to be a free directory. So I'm saying that there's no charge to be on the directory. This is this is my passion work. So a lot that I put into that is just because I want to when I can. Outside of that, for therapy services, I have a group practice. It's virtual. There's myself, and I have 3 other clinicians that work with me. I have interns, supervisees, all the things, community partnerships. I can be found at renewallifecounseling.com.
Okay.
That's the name of that
Like
practice.
Renewal Life
And other than that, like, I'm out in these
You
mental
on any
health
social
streets.
media?
She out here, y'all.
Social media, Facebook, Healing Through Time, Renewal Life Counseling is on, and this is all Instagram. I'm not a big, like, some of the other ones that are out there. Instagram, I have that too. But then my catch-all is Houston Consulting. So everything I do is going to be on my Houston Consulting page, because I'm promoting all of these things, but also any speaking engagements that I have or different opportunities that I'm bringing to the community. I like to put it on there so people will know what I got going on.
So y'all heard what she said. She said speaking engagement. So that means if you like these gems that she was out here talking,
gems,
y'all need to go to Houston Consulting and get with
Come
her.
on.
I'm telling you.
Come on.
Well, Tamara, you're definitely doing remarkable work in our community. And like you said earlier, it starts one person at a time. So we definitely want to give you your kudos and your credit while you're here on Speaking with Gravity. And we just appreciate your presence.
Thank you.
We do.
Thank you.
And all of the
It's been
insight
awesome.
and knowledge you provided today.
Yeah. You made it another great episode of Speaking with Gravity. I can't say that. And we would love to have you back.
Anytime.
Grieving holistically.
Grieving holistically. We hope you all enjoyed this episode today. Please continue to check in with the show, and please check in with our guest, Ms. Tamara Houston. She's been great, and I know you all have learned some things from this episode and taken some things with you, and we hope that you'll continue to engage with her. So till we meet again, we'll see you all soon on the next episode of Speaking with Gravity.
Take care, y'all.
See you.
Thank you.